Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 build guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're covering a build that gets drunk and uses the power of alcohol to explode entire encounters in a single attack. This is a melee damage and control build that obliterates encounters with AoE melee damage in very high amounts, and also locks down enemies so they can't possibly retaliate. So any party that's looking for a frontliner, or any party that is looking to not get attacked by enemies, can use this character to devastating effect. It'll also be great practice for when the Drunken Master Monk comes out next year, so you can start stockpiling your booze now. Before I begin, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to Scott Myers for the $10 donation, Nick for the $2, Atomic Citizen for the $25, and Michael Reynolds and Miker123 for becoming channel members. Thank you so much, my friends. I really appreciate the support, and it really means a lot. Alright, let's get drunk and hit things. I'm using Karlach as the example character here, because this is substantially a Barbarian build, and as the Barbarian of the party, it just makes sense for her. Also, this is a build about getting drunk and pounding things, and if you've completed her romance, you know that that's canonical for Karlach, so it's lore-friendly as well. Of course, you can also build this as a custom character, and if you do, what race you pick actually mostly does not matter. This character gets all the proficiencies you need from its class levels, and so does not need racial proficiencies. So the usual standouts apply, things like Wood Elf for the bonus movement speed, or Halfling for the ability to reroll ones. This character can have mild struggles with its saving throws, so Halfling's ability to reroll natural ones makes you a little safer there. Same with Gnome's mental save advantage, so either of those make an excellent choice as well. Also, it's just funny to have a tiny gnome getting drunk and obliterating an entire group of enemies in a single swing, so that would be my recommendation. At first level, we want to get to our powerful Barbarian abilities as quickly as possible, so we are of course going to start with a level of Barbarian to get to the abilities that make the build function as fast as we can. For our ability score selection, one of the great things about this build is it has almost no specific item or attribute requirements. We get all of the feats and proficiencies and attributes that we need to make the build function right out of the box, so we don't need to feed it any story events in order to increase our attributes. We don't need to even use strength elixirs or anything like that, so we can take a very standard attribute spread. We're going to start with 16 Strength and 16 Dexterity, as well as 14 Constitution and 12 Wisdom. The reason I'm suggesting that we take 16 Dexterity over 16 Constitution here is that after this character acts, most enemies will either be dead or locked down, so we want to go as fast as possible, so we take the extra Dexterity to give ourselves higher initiative. This build locks down enemies very efficiently, and so going before them will prevent them from taking turns, so the initiative matters more than the extra hit points. We also are a Barbarian, so we should have a lot of hit points to play with. Of course, if you are feeling nervous, it won't hurt your character that much to take the 16-14-16 instead of 16-16-14, but for this melee character, I think that this is the best attribute spread. For our skill selection here, the only important ones to make sure are that we have Athletics, so we can reposition enemies in combat, and Perception. Barbarians get it, and you might as well take it because it's very important for your party. And then you can pick up Intimidation if you want to be able to do conversations or anything else here. Really, Athletics and Perception are the only two that matter to this character. Of course, like any other strength character, this character can be built using elixirs, in which case you would take 8 strength and redistribute those attribute points to get yourself 16-16 in dexterity and constitution, and 14 wisdom to give yourself higher saving throws, and then you just drink an elixir of hill giant strength every day. But this character does not need to do that because we get all of the feats that we need from the levels itself. That's all the decisions we may have to make at level 1, so let's move on to level 2. At character level 2, we are taking our second level of Barbarian, and don't have any decisions to make at this level, but it's worth talking about something that I often mention when we take Barbarian levels, and that's Reckless Attack. This character actually is not going to Reckless Attack as often as other Barbarians will, because we will already have advantage on every attack that we make, because of our itemization choices, so you won't need Reckless Attack once you get your full Drunken combo online. That being said, in the early game, of course, this still helps you hit more regularly, and this character, as with any Barbarian, can be used to draw enemy attacks. Enemies will choose who to attack based on who they're most likely to hit, and a couple other considerations, but giving enemies advantage deliberately by manually activating Reckless Attack is an important strategy to keep in mind when you're playing a Barbarian. It can also help group enemies on top of this character in order to facilitate hitting them all with our AoE attacks, so Reckless Attack's still an important tool, even if this character won't be using it as often as other Barbarians. It's worth noting that because we aren't using Reckless Attack, this character can build very high armor class as well, and become very hard to hit, so you can also build this as a dodge tank, depending on how we choose to use our items, and I'll talk about that a little more when we get to the item section. So you can either use it as a traditional Barbarian tank to draw aggro away from your allies, or with high armor class in order to just not get hit, and either way, you're going to be very resilient and help your party out a lot. No decisions though, so let's go to level 3. At Barbarian level 3, we get to pick our Barbarian subclass, and of course we are taking Wildheart. This character is going to create a gigantic AoE explosion with every swing of its weapon, so what we want to do is hit multiple enemies with that swing so they each explode one another. The best way to do that, of course, is Tiger Heart Barbarian. Tiger Heart Barbarian gets the Tiger's Bloodlust action while raging, which gives you an AoE swing, so you can hit up to 3 enemies. Each of those 3 enemies is going to explode, hitting each of the other 3 enemies, because they're all going to be grouped around you in melee range, and the explosions will then splash to the other enemies, applying the effects that we will be applying on hit again and again and again, so this will combo extremely well to take out entire encounters in a single attack. Tiger Barbarian is incredible for this build, and it's what makes the build tick, so we want to get there as soon as possible. It's also, in my opinion, the generically most powerful Barbarian, so in the early game, before you get the Drunken combo online, you will still be just the most powerful Barbarian out there because of the AoE damage and the bleed effect and all of that, giving you a ton of additional value for the character. No other decisions to make, so let's go to level 4. And at character level 4, we get to take our first feat. The feat that we are going to select for this character is, of course, Great Weapon Master. Because we took 16 Dexterity, we don't need Alert as badly as other Honor Mode characters, so we can safely delay that or pass on it entirely. Great Weapon Master will increase our weapon damage dramatically, and at this early stage we have Reckless Attack to gain advantage on all of our attacks. Later on we will passively gain advantage on every single attack that we're making, and so Great Weapon Master's attack roll penalty will be negated for this character. We are of course going to be using a Great Club, and so this additional damage is going to trigger on every attack, giving us a dramatic increase in damage. You might worry about taking Great Weapon Master before you've increased your hit bonus. That's something that I see occasionally people have concerns with. But because you have Reckless Attack and are attacking with advantage, you will hit with your Great Weapon Master attacks very reliably. And of course you can always turn it off. As a general rule of thumb, if you have a 25% chance to hit or lower, turn off Great Weapon Master, or if an enemy of course has very low hit points and you don't need the extra 10 damage to kill them, turn off Great Weapon Master in order to just make it more reliable that you do the incidental damage to them. But Great Weapon Master is great for this character not only just because it's awesome for attacks, but also because of how Tiger's Bloodlust works. Tiger's Bloodlust halves the damage that you do with your swing. It's an AoE swing, but you do half damage. But the half damage that you do is only the base damage of your weapon, the weapon damage plus your strength. Add-ons to the damage output are not halved, so the plus 10 damage that we get from Great Weapon Master will deal the full 10 damage to all 3 enemies that we hit with a Tiger's Bloodlust swing, so it makes it even better than normal. It's already the best feat for this character, but even better than normal because of the Tiger's Bloodlust interaction and how powerful Great Weapon Master is there. At character level 5, we get to take our 5th level of Barbarian, gaining access to fast movement, which of course makes it easier for us to reach melee, and also makes it easier for us to position our character where we can hit multiple enemies. Often enemies will be spaced apart, like maybe they're in a straight line away from you, and you'll need to move a little past one of them to be able to swing your attack into both of them at once. And so having additional mobility makes that much more reliable so you can land your attacks on multiple enemies. We also, of course, get extra attack, doubling the number of attacks we can make in a turn, so even without any boosts to additional attacks from haste and similar effects, we can hit up to 6 enemies in a single turn now, which will trigger, of course, 60 damage from Great Weapon Master, as well as 6 explosions from the Punch Drunk Bastard, so we are going to be outlaying a ton of crowd control and a massive amount of damage as soon as we hit level 5 and get our gigantic power spike. Alright, character level 6. We are continuing to level in Barbarian because we get now an animal aspect, which brings one of this character's core combinations online. With the Punch Drunk Bastard, we're going to be dealing thunder damage to everyone when we hit them as long as we're drunk, which means that we can easily apply reverberation stacks to those enemies, which will then knock them prone. Since we're a Tiger Barbarian, we're also applying bleed to every enemy that we hit with our swing, with our Tiger Heart Rage swing. And so if we take aspect of the Wolverine, so we attack a bleeding enemy, or any enemy this actually triggers on the first attack against an enemy, the bleed applies before it checks for the Wolverine aspect, so they will get the bleed and the maim on the same attack. We will make an enemy bleeding, maimed, and prone. A prone enemy usually needs to use half of its movement to stand back up. But if they're maimed, which reduces their movement to 0, so movement speed reduced to 0, they can't spend any movement because they don't have any, so the enemy is just stuck on the ground while proned and maimed. This is incredibly powerful in Baldur's Gate 3, because a proned enemy cannot do anything. They're fully stunned. They might as well not exist, other than as damage sponges for future attacks from you. They can't react to anything. They can't concentrate on a spell. They can't act in any way. So this combination stuns enemies in a gigantic AoE. This is the core combo of most Tiger Heart Barbarian builds, but we apply it much more easily because the Punch Drunk Bastard lets us apply reverb in an AoE, so we're going to be stacking a lot more of it a lot quicker than the normal Tiger Barbarian, and making enemies fall over and unable to get back up with extreme power and reliability. At character level 7, we have a choice. We've gotten most of what we need from Barbarian, so we could branch out into levels of another class. But in my opinion, it's better to just take another level of Barbarian, because we get one of the best class features in the entire game in Feral Instinct. With the +3 initiative bonus from Feral Instinct, combined with the +3 initiative bonus from our 16 dexterity, this character will go first very reliably even against a lot of late-game enemies, and if we then combine it with a little bit of initiative gear, whatever our other party members don't need more, we'll be able to hit the 8 to 10 initiative bonus that most honor mode characters should strive for, without needing to take alert. So that lets us get 20 strength and Great Weapon Master without alert, because Feral Instinct is just so incredibly powerful. This, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated and one of the most powerful class features in the entire game. Very much worth getting to level 7 Barbarian for Feral Instinct, because it just makes your play so much smoother. It's especially good for this character because, as we just discussed, after we take a turn, enemies aren't getting a turn because they're lying on the ground crying, and so getting this bonus to initiative makes us even better at preventing enemies from acting, thanks to going before them. At character level 8, of course, we are going to take our 8th level of Barbarian, getting us our 2nd feat, as well as the ability to move through difficult terrain freely. This is especially useful if you have a party member that has spike growth, because land stride works to prevent plant growth or spike growth as spells from slowing you down. So this works extremely well with druids or nature clerics that are going to be using those as crowd control options, and also just gives you slightly easier navigation in some arenas. Mostly, though, of course, we are here for the feat, and the feat that we're going to take is an increase to our strength. If you're going the strength elixir route, you can just pick up alert. Alert is, of course, always good, even with Feral Instinct. More initiative is always better, and that will make this one of the fastest characters in the game. Plus 11 initiative is equal to the fastest enemy in the entire game in honor mode, so even with a very small amount of initiative bonus, you can guarantee before going before every single enemy in the game with plus 11, or of course just go very reliably before almost every enemy in the game. If you don't particularly want alert with the elixir build, then athlete is pretty nice. Just giving you some additional jump distance, and you could redistribute your stats to get 17 dex and take athlete to bring it up to 18. That would also be a very powerful option. Regardless, for this version of the build, we're just increasing our strength so that we hit harder and more reliably. Then, at level 9, we really have gotten everything that we want out of Barbarian. We could take Brutal Critical, but the Brutal Critical damage on Tigerheart Barbarian does get halved, so it's not as efficient for Tigerheart as it is for other Barbarians. I also think that this feature is lower damage than a lot of other things that we could have access to, so in general, I would advise multiclassing for the last 4 levels. Of course, if you just want to stay mono Barbarian, that will work perfectly well for this character. You can just take your last 4 Barbarian levels, but we're going to want to multiclass for the maximum amount of power. For our multi-class option, I think there's one that stands far and away above the others, and that is, of course, Fighter. Since this character just wants to attack all the time, then Action Surge is going to make us even better at doing that, and it means that we will have the burst damage to clear large groups of enemies, as well as the sustained damage to kill high health enemies, and for certain encounters, we can just get wildly more powerful, because Action Surge is just that good. Second Wind, also reasonable for this character. We're going to be a frontliner, so the bonus action heal. This character typically will be using its bonus actions for Great Weapon Master attacks, but Second Wind is a nice little option in some encounters where you would want to have a heal and didn't trigger Great Weapon Master. For our fighting style, of course, we're a Great Weapon character, so we're going to take Great Weapon Fighting to increase the damage of our weapons, and then move on to level 10. At level 10, we're going to take our second level of fighter, getting Action Surge, and making the character vastly more powerful, because of course Action Surge is probably the single best class feature in the game. You know, I talked about Feral Instinct as one of the best. I think Action Surge might be the absolute best. Maybe I should do a top 5 video or something, or like tier list of class features. That would be maybe a fun video. But aside from that, and we all know why Action Surge is good. Actions are good. This gives you more of them. Extra attacks on honor mode, incredible. But let's go to level 11, where we are going to take our third level of fighter. You could also branch out for 2 more levels. This character is distinguished by being, as I mentioned previously, extremely flexible with how we want to build it, both in terms of itemization and in terms of later class levels. But just getting our extra feat to go up to 20 strength is, in my opinion, the most important, and taking 2 more fighter levels will get us there very neatly. We also get a fighter subclass, and there are really any of the fighter subclasses have things to recommend them for this character. Battlemaster maneuvers are, of course, incredibly strong, and they also give you the riposte maneuver. Remember that this character will not always be reckless attacking, because we have advantage on every attack by default. So enemies will miss us reasonably frequently, and we can then make riposte attacks against them for extra damage output. As well as precision attack for attacks that we really want to hit. Both of those are going to be incredibly useful maneuvers. Eldritch Knight gives us access to the shield spell, which can be cast while raging in Baldur's Gate 3. That's a bug, but it does work while raging. This is some reaction spells can be cast while raging because of how they coded them, so this can also help defend your character. Or, of course, Champion Fighter can give you more critical hits, which then in turn gives you more additional attacks with Great Weapon Master. Since this is a Great Weapon Master build, Champion is also a reasonable choice. Of the 3, the strongest, I think, is the Battlemaster Fighter. The maneuvers are just so good. Precision attack is very useful against high AC enemies, even in the very late game. And riposte is, of course, going to give us a use for an action that we didn't have a use for. In combat, every turn, every character has 5 resources: action, bonus action, reaction, movement, and concentration. This character is not concentrating, of course, but with riposte, we can now use all 4 of our other actions to maximum effect, making the character extremely resource efficient. For our last one here, we can go with pushing attack or disarming attack. I'm going to go with or trip attack. We will be knocking enemies prone by default, so we won't need trip attack as much. Sweeping attack is also kind of interesting for this character because it does allow us to make an additional AoE attack without using Tiger Barbarian. It's not one that I would normally recommend for the Battle Master, but it is interesting for this character if we are out of rages and can't make additional AoE attacks. That being said, overall, disarming is probably the strongest, so that's what I'll recommend, but there's room to play here and customize the character to your liking. Finally, at character level 12, we are going to take our 4th level of fighter, getting access to our 3rd feat. For this version of the character, that feat is of course going to be an ability of score improvement, bringing our strength up to 20 for maximum attack and damage. If you are playing the elixir version of the character, so you don't need to put this attribute improvement into strength, then you get access to a bunch of other feats. You've already probably taken alert, and so athlete and alert both make excellent choices, as I mentioned previously. Mage Slayer is also very good because this gives us an extra use for our reaction in order to attack when enemies cast a spell, and advantage on saving throws against spells cast in melee with us. Won't come up that frequently, but when it does, we'll be glad to have it. One thing that this character can struggle with is saving throws, especially against like wisdom or intelligence targeting spells, so any advantage that we can get on that is pretty useful. Mobile for additional movement speed is also pretty nice, and of course will let us evade opportunity attacks, but mostly you're looking at alert and athlete for additional mobility and initiative. Alright my friends, that is it for the Drunken Pummeler build, but of course this character wants to use items that power us up when we drink, and other items that are important for the build, so let's talk about those. 4 items for this character. We are of course basing the character around being drunk all the time, and there's one item that makes this an incredibly powerful strategy, which is of course the Punch Drunk Bastard. We get this weapon in Act 2. Up until this point, we're playing as a Tiger Barbarian, which of course is a great thing to be playing as, but once we get the Punch Drunk Bastard, we can equip this weapon, start drinking as much as we want, and start obliterating enemies very easily. This weapon gives us advantage on every attack while we're drunk, and also, whenever we hit an enemy, deals an AoE thunder damage explosion, which only hits other enemies, so don't worry about friendly fire with that. And that means that we will deal with a Tiger Barbarian swing. We will have advantage on all of our attacks, and enemies will take 3d4 extra thunder damage per swing, because each of the explosions is going to chain onto the other enemies that we are hitting. That's an incredibly powerful effect, and then we can make it even more powerful when we add additional effects onto that. Since this is thunder damage, of course, this makes this an ideal reverberation build, so we're going to use the Gloves of Belligerent Skies to, whenever we deal thunder damage, add 2 turns of reverberation to all of the enemies, so that will be tons of reverb stacks for even more thunder damage, knocking enemies prone right away. And the Boots of Stormy Clamor, we will be inflicting conditions on hostile enemies constantly, because the Tiger Barbarian inflicts maim and inflicts bleed with every attack, and so the Boots of Stormy Clamor are going to be going off all the time, and we get tons of reverberation stacks from that as well. For even more reverb stacks, you can use the Drakethroat Glaive to enchant the Punch Drunk Bastard with additional thunder damage, because it doesn't have thunder damage on its actual hit. That is a separate effect. Normally, 2 instances of thunder on the same weapon attack won't double trigger the Gloves of Belligerent Skies, but because this is 1 on the actual hit and 1 from the explosion, you get 2 gloves triggers with the Drakethroat Glaive thunder enchantment for even more stacks of reverb. Those are really the only items that this character needs, but there are a couple other items that interact with drunkenness that are very important to mention. One of these is the Amulet of the Drunkard. Now, unfortunately, the tooltip for this item is wrong. It only heals you when you actually first drink the alcohol, so it basically turns alcohol into a potion. It does not heal you for 2d4 every turn that you're drunk. This tooltip is just completely incorrect. But increasing the duration of drunkenness to 5 turns is really helpful in longer encounters. Normally, when you drink alcohol, you only get drunk for 2 turns, which is just not enough time for some encounters. So the Amulet of the Drunkard makes it much smoother for us to actually go through encounters. One item that cares about being drunk that I don't recommend you use is the Drunken Cloth. This will lower your armor class drastically compared to just wearing normal medium armor. So you will lose out a lot on that, and advantage on con saves is not particularly important for this character, and the additional 2 temporary hit points that you would get every turn are just not particularly good compared to the things that one of the good medium armor sets can get you, or even another unarmored, if you want to be unarmored for this character, because of course a naked raging barbarian is very fun as well. Another unarmored set like the Bone Spike garb will be better than the Drunken Cloth. What you really want, though, is just a normal, powerful set of medium armor. I like the Adamantine Scale Mail, because then this will make enemies... it'll inflict conditions for the Boots of Stormy Clamor, because the reeling condition, if enemies hit you, counts, and it prevents you from taking spiky damage from critical hits, so this character, even if things go wrong, will be very, very resilient. Another option is just one of the high AC medium armors, like the Armor of Agility, or one of the armors that gives you bonus initiative. Any of those are going to be excellent choices. Any item that gives you a little bit of extra initiative is pretty valuable for this character, but finally, of course, the most important thing that we need to mention is that you need alcohol. Normally, it takes a bonus action to drink alcohol, which conflicts with entering a rage, so that can be a pain point for the characters. You have to spend a bonus action 1 turn to drink, bonus action another turn to enter a rage. We mitigate that by drinking before combat starts with the Amulet of the Drunkard, then we have plenty of duration on our booze. But another way to mitigate that is specifically with the Wine Goblet. You can find a bunch of these in Act 3. I think there's a merchant that sells them. They're also available as random loot throughout the game. And the important thing about the Wine Goblet is, for whatever reason, this does not require an action of any kind in order to use. So you can drink it, so you can see we'll enter turn-based mode. We will consume this Wine Goblet. And notice that we still have both action and bonus action and have received the alcohol condition. So the Wine Goblet lets us drink without having to actually spend any time with our character on it, so we get additional value from that, and that makes it by far the best kind of booze. Of course, you want to stockpile all kinds with this character in order to make sure that you have a never-ending supply, since it's so important to our weapon damage and effects. Alright, my friends, I hope that you have enjoyed this look at the Drunken Pummeler. As always, of course, if you have enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a comment and hit like. Helps me out a ton with the algorithm. And happy pummeling with this character. It's so much fun to play, just blasting enemies all over the place. Of course, you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 build guides and other strategy game analysis. And thanks so much for watching. I will catch you next time.